Sign the transfer or I go to your licensing board and tell them you've been misrepresenting your credentials to clients for 3 years. That was the voicemail my brother left me at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning. No hello, no context, just that, and then the sound of him hanging up. I stood in my kitchen in Mississauga holding my phone, still in the oversized sweater I'd slept in, and I listened to it twice. Not because I didn't hear it the first time, because I needed to make sure I understood exactly what he was threatening before I decided what to do about it. I'm 31 years old. I'm a licensed mortgage broker with the Financial Services Regulatory Authority of Ontario. I've spent 6 years building a client base from nothing, working evenings and weekends, while my brother spent those same years calling our mother to complain that life wasn't being fair to him, and in 4 sentences, he thought he could take all of it. He was wrong, but I didn't call him back, not yet. I set my phone face down on the counter and made coffee. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me a little, and then it didn't. I'd been waiting for something like this for a long time. Not this exactly, but something. My brother is 3 years older than me and has never, in the entirety of his adult life, solved a problem without involving someone else's money. Usually mine, usually through our mother, who has a gift for framing his disasters as family emergencies that require collective action. The collective, in practice, has always meant me. 6 months after I got my broker license, he called to say he'd defaulted on a personal loan and his credit was about to be destroyed. He didn't ask me directly. He told our mother, who called me crying, saying he'd lose his apartment and could I please just co-sign a refinance for him, just this once. I co-signed. He missed 3 payments in the first year. My credit score took the hit. I spent 4 months getting it corrected. 2 years ago, he started a landscaping company with his friend and ran it into the ground in 8 months. He came to me then, directing for $18,000 to pay off a supplier debt and keep the company alive. I said no. Our mother didn't speak to me for 6 weeks. I told myself that was fine, that I'd made the right call, but I still felt it every day of those 6 weeks. And now this, I poured my coffee and sat down at my kitchen table and thought about what he was actually threatening. He said I'd been misrepresenting my credentials to clients. That was specific. That wasn't a general accusation he could throw around. That was something designed to sound like a FSRA complaint. Something that, if it landed, could trigger a review of my license, freeze my ability to take on new clients, and follow my name in industry records long after it was resolved. He had no evidence because there was no evidence. I hadn't done anything wrong, but that's not always the point. Sometimes the complaint itself is the weapon, even if it goes nowhere. I opened my laptop. I had a client file due by noon. I finished it. I sent it. Then I went back to the voicemail and listened one more time, this time with a notepad in front of me. I wrote down every word. Then I picked up my phone and called my brother back. He answered on the second ring, which told me he'd been waiting. "So you got my message," he said. "I did," I said. "I want to make sure I understand it. You want me to sign a transfer." "Transfer of what, exactly?" There was a pause. "Mom's property in Brampton. The house. She wants to put it in my name." Our mother had lived in the same semi-detached house in Brampton for 22 years. It wasn't worth a fortune, but it was worth something. More than something given what had happened to the market, and it was the one asset she had that could anchor her retirement. "Mom wants this?" I said. "She thinks it's practical. I'm the one who's been helping her. You're barely around." I'd driven to Brampton 11 days ago to help her sort through my late father's not been there. He lived 40 minutes closer. "Has she talked to a lawyer?" I asked. "She doesn't need a lawyer, it's a family matter." I wrote that down too. "And you want me to sign off on the transfer because you're on the title," he said. "Dad put both our names on it when he updated the will. You know that." I did know that. What I also knew was that our father had done that deliberately, as a check. He'd told me once, near the end, that he didn't want the house to be easy for anyone to move without thought. He'd said it gently, but I understood what he meant. "I'll think about it," I said. "There's nothing to think about. Mom wants this. You're being selfish." I said, "I'll think about it." He hung up. I sat with my coffee going cold and felt something settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, something more like clarity. The kind that comes when you've been confused about something for a long time and suddenly, you're not. I called a real estate lawyer that afternoon. Not a family friend, not someone my mother had used before, a lawyer I found independently, whose office was in downtown Toronto and who had no existing relationship with anyone in my family. I explained the situation. She asked me to send her the title documents, which I had access to because I was on the title. I sent them that evening. She called me back the next morning. Your name is on this property as a joint tenant with your mother, she said. Your brother's name is not on the title at all. I already knew that, but I needed someone else to say it out loud. If your mother wants to transfer sole ownership to your brother, she would need your signature, and she would need to sever the joint tenancy first. There's a process. It doesn't happen with just a signature on a form. And if I don't agree to the transfer, then it doesn't happen. What would a complaint to FSRI look like? I asked. If someone made one against a licensed broker, how long does it take to resolve? She paused. Are you asking someone has threatened to file one? Yes. Another pause. Document everything, she said. Every conversation, every voicemail, every text. If the complaint is fabricated and you have evidence of coercion, that changes the nature of what's happening significantly. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I went to my phone's voicemail settings and saved the recording to 3 places: my cloud backup, my work email archive, and an external hard drive I kept in my home office. I screenshotted my call log. I typed out a full written summary of the phone call with my brother, time-stamped, and emailed it to myself. I learned this from work. In mortgage brokering, documentation isn't just good practice. It's the difference between a misunderstanding and a paper trail. You write things down not because you expect to need them, but because you need to be the person who has them when it matters. Then I called my mother. She answered warmly. She always does. She asked if I'd eaten, whether I was sleeping enough, whether I was seeing anyone, the usual. I said yes to all of it, and then I said, I talked to my brother. Her tone shifted, just slightly. The warmth was still there, but underneath it, something tightened. He told me he reached out to you. I'm glad. He left me a voicemail threatening to report me to my licensing board if I didn't sign the transfer, I said. Silent. Mom, did you know he was going to do that? He's just frustrated, she said quietly. He's been having a hard year. He feels like the family hasn't supported him the way. He threatened my career, I said. On a recorded voicemail, I need to know if you asked him to do that. Of course not. Her voice was smaller now. I didn't know he was going to say that. I thought maybe if you understood how much it would help him having the property in his name, being able to use it. Use it how? Another silence. Longer. He's looking at a home equity line of credit, she said finally. He has some debts he needs to consolidate. The bank told him he'd qualify with the house as collateral. There it was. My brother didn't want the house. He wanted to borrow against it. He wanted to put our mother's only significant asset up as collateral for his debts, and he needed my name off the title to do it. And if the loan went sideways, and based on his history it would go sideways, the house would be at risk. Does she understand that? I asked. Does she understand that if he defaults, she could lose the house? She trusts him. I know she does. I didn't say anything else about it that call. I told my mother I loved her. I told her I'd be in touch. And then I sat very still for a while thinking about the fact that my brother had been willing to threaten my professional license to access collateral that wasn't his, on a property he wasn't on the title of, using our elderly mother as the vehicle. I thought about the cosign from 6 years ago. The $18,000 I'd said no to and paid for in silence for 2 years. The 11 years of being the one who drove to Brampton, handled the paperwork, called on the actual birthdays instead of 2 days after. I thought about how none of it had ever been framed as me being a good daughter. It had been framed as me barely doing enough. And my brother, who did almost none of it, was still the one described as going through a hard year, as frustrated, as needing support. I wasn't angry at my mother. I understood her completely. He was her son and she loved him, and she had spent 34 years protecting him from consequences, and at this point it was just the only way she knew how to love him. But understanding something doesn't mean you have to keep absorbing the cost of it. I opened my laptop. For 8 months, a message had been sitting in my professional inbox from a brokerage in Vancouver. They'd reached out after I'd presented at a regional conference, said they were expanding their Ontario referral network and looking for brokers interested in joining their associate program. Fully remote, flexible, with the option to relocate. The compensation structure was better than what I was earning independently, and the administrative overhead would drop significantly because they handled compliance and filing centrally. I had not replied because I'd told myself I wasn't ready to leave the network I'd built in Mississauga. Because my mother was in Brampton and I liked being close enough to drive over when she needed something. Because leaving felt like abandoning something, though I couldn't always name exactly what. I replied to the email. I said I was interested and asked if the offer was still open. They responded in 4 hours. It was still open. They'd been hoping to hear from me. I didn't accept immediately. I had something to do first. My brother had made a threat. A specific, documented threat. He thought that threat would make me panic, sign the form, and step back from the house because I was afraid of an investigation. He thought I was the same person who co-signed a loan 6 years ago because my mother cried. He thought I was still operating from the place where keeping the peace was worth any price. He forgot that I spent 6 years learning exactly how title transfers, collateral agreements, and regulatory complaints actually work. He came after me in my area of expertise. I called him back on a Thursday evening. "Have you thought about it?" he asked. "I have," I said. "I'm not signing the transfer." A beat. "You're not serious." "I am, but I want to explain something to you, and I need you to listen carefully." I kept my voice even, almost gentle, like I was walking a nervous client through a document they didn't understand. A joint tenancy transfer requires both parties to consent and appear before a notary. It's not a form you can email someone. And a fabricated FSRA complaint filed as retaliation after a documented financial dispute doesn't just get dismissed, it gets flagged. The person who files it gets investigated too, for abuse of process, potentially for attempted extortion. Silence. "I have your voicemail saved in 3 places," I said. "I have a time-stamped written record of our phone call from Monday. I have a legal opinion from a real estate lawyer outlining the full title situation with dates. If a complaint gets filed, I'm not the one who needs to worry about what happens next." More silence, the kind that has weight to it. "I'm also not going to sign away my name on a property our father put me on specifically to prevent this kind of thing from happening. I think he knew you better than either of us ever said out loud." "You're bluffing," he said, but his voice had changed. "I'm not," I said. "And here's the other thing. I'm in contact with a lawyer about a potential notice of severance on the joint tenancy, which would convert our mother's share of the property into a tenancy in common. That would make it significantly harder to use her portion as collateral without explicit legal review. I'm doing that to protect her, not to punish you, but I need you to understand that I've thought through every step of this." He didn't say anything for almost a full minute. "You would really do this to the family," he said finally. I'd been waiting for that sentence my whole life without knowing it, the one that reframes the person refusing to be exploited as the one causing harm. "I'm not doing anything to the family," I said. "I'm declining to let you use our mother's home as collateral for your debt. That's all." I ended the call. I'd been honest with him about the legal steps I was considering. What I hadn't told him was what I'd already quietly set in motion. 2 days earlier, I'd sent my mother a letter, not an email, a physical letter, because I knew she read those carefully, outlining exactly what a home equity line of credit meant, what the risk was if payments weren't made, and what had happened with the cosign I'd done 6 years ago, and the details she'd never been told about the missed payments and the credit impact. I'd also included a 1-page summary of her options, written plainly, with a note that she could call the lawyer, whose card I'd tucked inside the envelope if she had any questions. I told her I wasn't trying to tell her what to do. I was making sure she had the full picture before she decided anything. I knew my brother would go to her the moment our call ended. I knew he would be angry and would frame the conversation his way and would probably cry, because he'd always been good at crying at the right moment. I knew she would feel torn and guilty, and that the next few weeks would be uncomfortable. But I also knew she'd received the letter. I knew she'd read it. She always read my letters. I accepted the Vancouver offer the following Monday. I didn't tell my brother I didn't tell my mother right away either. I gave notice on my Mississauga office lease, started the process of transferring my active client files to a colleague I trusted, and began the administrative work of joining the new brokerage. I packed my apartment over the course of 2 quiet weekends. I'd lived there for 4 years. When I moved in, I'd thought I was putting down roots. Looking around at the cardboard boxes stacked by the door, I understood that what I'd actually been doing was nesting inside someone else's idea of what my life was supposed to look like, close to family, always available. A resource with a name. My mother called me 10 days after I'd sent the letter. She'd spoken with the lawyer. She was upset, but not at me, or not only at me. She said she hadn't fully understood what a HELOC meant, and that the lawyer had explained some things she hadn't known. She said my brother hadn't told her about the missed payments on the cosign. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He told me you threatened him." I told him the legal reality of what he'd asked me to do, I said. and I told him I'd saved his voicemail. She didn't respond immediately. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she said finally. It wasn't really a question. I got an opportunity in Vancouver, a good one. "Because of this, because of a lot of things," I said honestly. "But yes, because of this too," she cried a little. I didn't try to talk her out of it. I told her I loved her and that I would still call and that Vancouver wasn't the moon. I told her she was welcome to visit. I meant all of it. My brother texted me the night before I flew out. No greeting, just, "You're really doing this." I read it at the gate at Pearson, my carry-on at my feet, the departures board flickering above the rows of seats. I thought about all the iterations of myself that had replied to messages like that one, apologizing, explaining, softening, offering something to make the discomfort go away. I put my phone in my bag. The flight boarded on time. I found my seat, a window, because I'd specifically chosen a window, and I watched the lights of the GTA pull away beneath the clouds. The CN Tower disappeared first, then the grid of orange streetlights, and then there was just dark and the faint suggestion of Lake Ontario and then nothing familiar at all. My phone buzzed just before I turned it to airplane mode. A notification from my new brokerage app. My profile had gone live on their site. First day active. I'd already gotten an inquiry from a client in Kelowna. I turned the phone over and looked out the window. My father used to say that the people who love you correctly don't need to hold things over your head to keep you close. He said it once, not as advice exactly, just as something he believed. I was maybe 19 at the time, and I'd nodded and not really understood it. I understood it now. Some titles aren't yours to give away, and some flights, once you're on them, are exactly as one way as they need to be.